Okay, welcome to the conservation meeting on June 6th already, 2018. First is a continuation of an NOI from 47 Carrier Lane.
Good evening. Just for the record, my name is Zach Couture with HST Group, representing Mr. Britt on 47 Carrier Lane. So the last meeting, I think the major issue was the distance between the wetlands and the actual garage. So with the new set of plans we have here, we were able to get beyond the 25 feet, which you guys require, so we're now at 26.1. I think that was kind of the major sticking point. And we were able to do that working along with Brandon, who's been extremely helpful through this process. When they redid the flags, there was kind of one phantom flag, and we reviewed everything, and with reviewing from Brandon, we were kind of decided it was kind of a rogue flag. So we went with the current line that was already out there, and then we also shaved 7 feet off of the garage. We actually cut it in. So now we are able to get that beyond the 25 feet, which you guys do require. And I think that was pretty much the major hold up, if you will. So I'll be happy to answer any questions or comments you guys have.
Well, I went out and I rechecked things, and what you said is correct.
Yeah.
I haven't been back there since. One things that I asked to be done is that you need to put the flag back where it used to be.
Right.
Because then there could be confusion during construction if that flag is there, but it's not the one that would be agreed on.
Right.
So it should be put back to where it was before.
Yeah. Right.
Right.
Where we have no issue with that. Fortunately for my client, when they hung the new flags, they actually left the majority of the old flags out there.
Mhm.
So that's how we were even we were able to realize, like, well, why is this now
That's right.
10 feet that way? You know what I mean? So, also too, just to make sure the accuracy of it, just in case it has been moved or blown or rehung, when we go to stake out where they're gonna put the erosion control measures, and also the foundation will survey locate, especially that A12 flag, because that's the major flag. So we'll make sure that's in place and the line is
Right.
where it should be.
And that gives you the room you need to keep at least 25 feet away from wetlands.
Yeah, that is correct. Yeah, we're about 26.1 feet, right to the edge of the foundation of the new garage, the proposed garage.
Right, and that area between the garage and the wetland is already a disturbed lawn area anyway.
Right, correct.
You plan to keep on, continue using.
Yeah, it would just be lawn area, and any area obviously after that wetland boundary would be loam and seeded and protected with erosion controls.
And as far as everything else in the plan, I believe, unless Mr. Heft has any comments, I believe he's addressed everything that the Conservation Commission asked of him. Did I miss something?
I haven't seen the revised drawings, but the only other thing we had some discussion about is whether or not you needed wetlands flags on that side. Wetland signs, I mean.
Yeah, do you want wetland signs?
I mean, that was the discussion last week or 2 weeks ago. And not to put you on the spot, but you were going to, when you went out there, determine whether or not it was needed or not in this situation, and I haven't been out there, so I can't tell you.
I think it's pretty distinct where the edge of the woods is, and I personally don't think it's gonna get encroached on, because it kinda drops, and it's just, it wouldn't be convenient to encroach in there anyway.
Okay.
I mean, that's ultimately up to the commission, but I don't think it's entirely necessary right there, unless you wanna volunteer.
I think we'd be happy to go along with whatever the commission thought best.
Well, that's usually putting up signs.
I'm not opposed to signs.
Okay, then neither am I.
And it stays consistent with what we generally have been doing in the past, so it makes it easier for us.
Right.
I agree. All right, so that'll be contingent on condition.
Now, the only other thing that I may have overlooked on one of these other jobs, but I like to see at least where we're putting erosion control that close to the wetlands, in this
Mhm.
case, 25 feet away.
Right.
that would like to see silt fence and wattles, not just the wattles, because the wattles are easily run over, destroyed and everything else,
Right.
whereas the silt fence gives you a better visual barrier
Mhm.
as the limit of the work.
Yeah.
And it's a
Um,
little more permanent during
right.
construction.
Right, and just to alleviate some of your concerns, we actually are proposing, everywhere that there's straw wattles, there'll be a silt, fence behind it, just to
Okay.
add added protection, especially with the water and wetlands so close, it's definitely necessary for the site.
So, you like the idea, Bob, that when you're that close, when you're right at the 25-foot zone, you'd like to have a combo as opposed to just wattles?
Yeah.
Right.
Andy?
I'm good. I think you did everything we
Nope.
asked for.
Everything looks good.
Okay,
Make a motion to close the public hearing?
Well, do a contingency. I'm sorry, I got ahead of myself, go ahead.
Second?
all those in favor?
Aye. Make a motion to issue an order of conditions with the addition of couple signs at the wetland, and it already has the wattles with the barrier, that's,
According
Yeah,
to-
the silt fence,
I
yeah.
haven't seen
Yeah,
the
we're-
drawings, but yes.
Yeah, we're proposing that.
They're not in
So,
yet.
Two signs, equidistant?
Yeah.
Between the lake and the driveway?
works.
So, I'm gonna write that down. I can get you the information on the sign.
Excellent, thank you.
That's it?
Second,
Second.
all those in favor? Aye.
I think Joyce wins the second on that one.
Yeah, we had a
No.
second battle. She was trying to get me
No,
to
I-
second, but she seconded first.
No, I can't second it, so,
Oh, you can't, that's right,
Oh,
so I
okay.
was,
First, second,
So I forget that.
and they're out of here before 7:10, that's pretty good.
That is good.
That, I think.
Let's keep it going.
well, we have to
Thank
wait
you
till
for your time, I
7:15.
Have a good night.
Thank you all.
Let's see, we can approve the minutes, you want us to do May 2nd again, just in case?
Make a motion to approve minutes of May 2nd and May 16, 2018.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Do we have,
Well, we got 87 Duval Road, that was supposed to have a site visit done,
87 Duval?
but there's, I think I'm waiting for the
yeah,
replication.
we need-
you wait for a letter from the,
Not raising a finger until there's
I
wetland.
thought we said that was coming off the agenda until the wetland,
so you got a letter.
the letter came in.
Alright, I can do
Sure.
that.
Did-
9
Have you
Harvey,
made them
I think
aware that we want that letter, Wanda?
I believe I sent it out to, I'd have to look in the file to find out who I sent it to.
And I think the same thing was true for 9 Harback.
Yeah, until a minute. I'll get in touch with them again.
Okay, I went by 5.5 West Sutton Road, and they put a driveway in, blacktop driveway, so I don't know if it was non-existing, if it was existing before or not, but it's extremely steep, which I think exceeds,
Here's a letter that I wrote.
exceeds what is allowed, but there was a pile of dirt in the front yard. I guess the house burned and they've been doing stuff on the house,
Trying to picture it.
but it's right near the Melbury line.
I'll
It's
get it in a
way
second.
down over a bank, and, there's a pod in the front,
Okay.
and,
Oh, I know, yeah, I know what it
Yeah.
is. Yeah, I remember what
so and they didn't file with us, so I asked Wanda to, write a letter to have them come in and explain things.
Was
There
it
was no filing.
re-blacktopped or was it new?
I don't know,
Oh, did I do the wrong one?
Yeah.
I did the wrong one.
cause I don't think they're gonna drive a car
That's
down
the
there for a
second one,
driveway,
yeah.
but,
That's the one for the 5, and this is a different one.
okay.
Different one. That's the other one,
Okay.
yeah.
And I went this afternoon, she sent me out to Sunrise Drive, 13, 14, and 15, when Mary Lou Mulhane came in. And I went out and looked, and the trees have all been cut, but I only saw, blueberry bushes planted on 16 and nothing on 15 and 13 and a half. And there was a tree, but it was said it had a tag on there, sourwood tree. So it's
I put both letters there, so if you wanna just look at them and see
Okay.
if they're okay to send out.
The other thing I did was I went to Marion's camp, Jen Hager called, and they put in erosion controls down there, even though they're over 200 feet away from the lake because it's so steep there. And I was just in shock at all the knotweed. So I emailed her back and I said, I'm sickened with all the knotweed because it used to be right along the edge. And I walked into the parking lot and you couldn't even see the lake. It had all grown up there and there was a basin down below and that was all Japanese knotweed. So I emailed her, she said they were aware of it and she was gonna get a hold of DPW to cut it all back. But I mean, it's just,
It'll grow
Disgusting.
right back though, right?
yes, but if
Oh,
it
yeah.
goes to seed, it's gonna be,
Even worse.
yeah. So they need to keep it cut down before it goes to seed,
Japanese knotweed is the most egregious
yes.
invasive species plant I know.
Yes, if you invent something to get rid of it, you'd be a billionaire. Although they say you can eat it in the spring, so.
Oh, lovely.
Take your word for it.
Gee, I wonder what kind of reaction you get from that.
Any update on 198 Manchag Road?
I don't have,
That's what Jim and the selectmen
telling
and
me that it's in our hands. And I don't know, did you find any more information on that, Joe?
Well, when I talked to Jen called about Stockwell too. And so we were gonna discuss that and kind of bring them all together at the same time, so.
Alright.
I'm gonna try to get together with her next week sometime.
Yeah, because Jim doesn't know what we're looking for, so.
The Lucky Road, that's the one still with the bittersweet and the,
Yeah,
Yeah,
I can
that's the
see
one
that
we
they
went to.
did a lot of work and they got rid of a lot of the big stuff. Problem is all they cut them, and now they're coming up from the shoots and the roots, and
Take the
it's
roots
like
out.
just invading the whole area all over again. They really have to be like comprehensively go in there with herbicide and just kill it all. You can't be afraid to crack a few eggs to make an omelet.
even then it comes
Seems
back.
to me I killed it with Roundup. In my yard.
Roundup works.
I killed it,
okay, so that takes care of all of those. And we are now at 7:15. We have a continuation of an NOI on 137 Dodge Hill Road.
Good evening. For the record, Travis Brown of Andrews Survey and Engineering, here on behalf of Stockwell Farm for a proposed 4-lot subdivision. We had met a few weeks ago on this. Since we've been to the planning board 2 times this past Monday, they've actually approved the plan. There were some minor revisions, nothing visually that changed. The road remained the same, the grading remained the same. We had some minor revisions from peer review comments, from planning comments, and then we also took into consideration the things that we discussed at this last meeting. So I have, from our last meeting, a diversion ditch, which we discussed placing that, which I had called out on sheet C4 of the site plan, which would run on the top side of that 2-to-1 cut slope to protect that during construction. Once it's stabilized, that could be graded out. We've also proposed erosion control blankets, 100% biodegradable blankets that would be put on that slope to help stabilize it before grass starts growing. We have added a limit of disturbance line that surrounds the project. If you remember, we have an erosion control barrier that runs here that stopped at the slope, because this is all going uphill. We've had that limited disturbance line from this point all the way out to the street. Also, we've added slurry pits to each one of these wells. We don't know exactly where these wells are going until we do the septic design. We have soil testing for that coming up next week, actually. But I've shown that slurry pit typical on each one of those wells. And lastly, we revised the detail that shows that our proposed strip drain with the stone open to the surface, so it's part of that grass swale. But we've added that perforated pipe and stone in there. This detail 6 here. So that will remain a grass swale. The strip drain will be below that, so that will have stone and that perforated pipe to help that water and groundwater or potential runoff from coming down that hill. So this is an open space subdivision. We've talked to the planning board briefly about what's to become of that open space. One of the thoughts would be if the Conservation Commission would be willing to take that, or if they, what their opinion on that open space would be.
Well, Jen called me and mentioned it, so we were gonna get together. What were you thinking of, a conservation restriction?
Well, we would, preferably it would be best to turn it over to the town Conservation Commission, for you to do as you see fit with it.
What would that, what
It'd
area
be-
would that
it'd
be?
But, to transfer that property, there'd be a new deed and everything.
So what
Just be owned
part
by
would
the
that
town.
be?
So that would be from this, so this is the limits kind of our lots. So it would be this, and then I can show you an overview. So basically, it would be this parcel here, which comes out to Dodge Hill Road. And then it would also be this parcel here that comes out to Leland Hill Road. So in total, it's about 19.5 acres.
And it looks like there's a considerable amount of upland.
Yes, there's the majority of this required open space under the regulations is upland.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of times people, propose to give you the wetland. They're not gonna be able to do anything with it anyway. It's like, why bother burdening the town? But that's a lot of upland, so, yeah, that's valuable stuff.
It would be accessible for the public if there was to be a walking trail or something. And I think it would be beneficial for the Conservation Commission to take it.
So that's a good question, is access. Where could people park? Because it's not, Dodge Hill Road is pretty busy, and I don't remember there being very many places to pull over the side of the road. And you wouldn't be able to really access it from Leland Hill Road, the same kind of situation.
Yeah, the parking for people that aren't in close proximity may be problematic, but I think there's a lot of people around here that would be able to potentially use it.
Is that gray area the wetlands?
This, yeah.
Right,
this-
so
So
you
the-
wouldn't be able to get in through Dodge Hill Road anyway, cause it's swamp.
Yeah, what about Leland Hill? Is there anywhere to?
Kind
Oh.
of touches the road there might be.
Well, that's also swamp, but what's on the right side of the cul-de-sac?
Yeah, so that strip is all available. And then this road someday may be public road as well, so people can access.
Yeah, you
through
could
there.
technically park on the side of that cul-de-sac, couldn't you? Or is it private?
Well, it may be public, but not to infringe on safety vehicle maneuverability and things like that. Parking within that roadway is probably not feasible.
For the record, Bill Wentz, 154 Dodge Hill. The 90 feet left on Dodge Hill? That rectangle. That shows it wet, and it is wet in there, but there is a walking path already established in there now. There is no parking, it's parked on the side of the road. But we do have actually someone who wanted to buy one of the lots, only wanted the lot because he likes to walk back there. So now I don't think he wants to buy the lot, because he can still probably end up walking back there. And they also come in, which they probably shouldn't, but they do come in from the old Cameron property. There are some people that are up there, so.
So, yeah, I was gonna get together with her next week, and she wanted to see some of the language, and I think, talk about conservation restrictions too. I don't know if the Steele's property or what, but anyway, we're supposed to get together, and I really didn't know what she was talking about, so.
I don't know, can you, just a point of question, I guess, is the premise that you're going on is that the housing that you're putting in there is on the buildable portion of the lot is small, but that there is plenty of open land to go with it. And if you deed that land to the town, does that still cover that requirement to have so much land with a house to begin with?
That's one of the places it has to be deeded to. Well, what are the options?
Right.
That or like a land trust.
Yeah,
Right.
nonprofit, the town, or a homeowners association.
My personal opinion is it would be beneficial to the town as long as you could park a couple of vehicles somewhere. To maybe get that written into the agreement that there's a couple of parking spots on the side of that cul-de-sac that are open to the public.
Yeah.
They don't have to be paved or anything fancy, but
I think there's the potential and the space to be able
Yeah.
to probably do that there.
I don't know about the language of it. I don't know how,
You'll be able to skirt around that lot, was that lot 4?
So this is lot 4 here, frontage is here, but yeah, there's a 50-foot, minimum 50-foot strip around that.
And the person who buys lot 4 is just gonna have to deal with people walking around their property.
Would they I'm thinking that they would probably mow that and consider that their lawn, but,
Well, it's all
That's
woods
wooded now.
right
it's
now.
wooded now.
So, not that it's anything the Conservation Commission could really stop from a wetlands perspective, but you'd be stopping at the property lines.
From a topography standpoint, it'd be a hell of a walk, I think, isn't it quite a grade change there?
It is, it
Yeah, it'd be a good incline uphill, good
People-
exercise.
People walk it all the time though. Well, actually, it's kinda deceiving, cause those upper lots are probably somewhat woods, and that's where the trail
Oh,
goes
yeah.
through.
you can see it. Look at the lines.
Yeah,
That's
yeah, so once you get up in there, obviously it looks a little better, but to come up this way, it's reasonably steep.
What's the alternative? Like the land trust or?
Or homeowners association, where my understanding is the 4 houses would own all that land.
Yeah, so the public wouldn't have the ability to go on it.
Is it coming out of farmland?
It's been removed.
But it has,
Well, we haven't paid the rollback taxes, you can't pay that till the property's sold, is my understanding.
So I guess we'll have to talk about it.
Welcome to walk it.
Been there once or twice.
If you go all the way up though through the field, it's a nice walk.
I've been pulling ticks off me for the last month. I'll wait.
Yes.
Has it been approved by the planning board?
Yes.
The ZBA and all that, all the other boards have approved it?
It's just the planning board that needed to approve it.
So should we wait till talk to Jen to see, what she has to say?
I don't think it changes the trajectory of it. I mean, it's gonna have to be conveyed to one of those 3 entities. I guess maybe it could be a condition that it could be the town of Sutton if the town of Sutton is willing to take it.
I think the big thing is the big question is the Conservation Commission willing to take this on as the caretaker of the caretaker. It'd be nice to say, yeah, you gotta have a few parking spot that's really out of the commission's purview, but you can definitely put the recommendation in to Jen in the planning board. That's how I would go about it. So, you have the question before you is, do you wanna take it on? And make a recommendation to Jen about parking spaces. That's what I do.
one of the things that I wanted to do is to make a list of things that we control, which I've never had time to do, so, but I.
Add another one to the list.
Add another one to the list, yes.
How many acres was it again?
About
Nine-
19 and a half.
19 and a half, so that's a good chunk of land, yeah. I think it's a good idea. Well, I was on the master plan committee, and that was one of the things that people wanted to know too, was, you know, where they could go for a walk and recreation and what lands were available.
Mhm.
And Jen was gonna do a
But at
folder with it.
At those grades, is it really usable?
Mm,
Off of the cul-de-sac? I don't.
For what? What kind of use?
well, she was gonna do a folder, a list of what lands were available for public access.
Right.
One on Mendon Road, there's no real parking. People just park on the road, right?
Well, there is a little bit of parking into where it goes in there. And there's some parking spaces for Shaw Farm off of Central Turnpike.
Yeah. I mean, there's enough on the two roads for people to park on the side of the road, but you're still parking on the road.
Mhm.
So,
And that's not gonna see the traffic that Mendon Road is. So. Anyway.
And then the next Eagle Scout project will be creating a trail.
Right. Right.
Okay, so somebody has to make a motion. If,
Hold on
for
a second
whatever.
here.
Brandon's on that.
From my notes from last time, where is it? One of the things that was discussed last time is that the road can't be built until all the NOIs are submitted. Do you wanna still go forward with that recommendation? I forget who made it, but that was one of them. Also that,
I believe they did, actually.
No, I did.
Oh, you did?
You can't build the road without doing the grading for the lots. Or you will end up grading through the lots beyond the limit of work one way or the other because the cut involved for the road at the cul-de-sac area in particular.
okay. Another recommendation from last meeting was that invasives in the 100-foot buffer zone be removed, whether or not you wanna go forward with that as a condition. And, include the operations and maintenance plan as an in perpetuity condition. Has that changed at all since we last spoke?
No, it hasn't.
Okay. And the fact that the mitigation was 25, 25, 25 for the detention basin and the two houses as part of the rationale for allowing the work, unavoidable work within the AWRA and buffer zone.
The other thing that was in question, as I recall, was the detention pond and that fell, part of that fell within the 25-foot buffer zone.
That's right.
And if it was, you're gonna look to see whether or not you could tweak twist it around or something to make that fit, as I recall.
Yeah, it still remains slightly inside that 20-foot within the field. And I thought we had discussed that we were okay with that, given the mitigation.
Well, it'd be a policy variance based on the fact they're doing excellent mitigation. And you could even add in the open space to that
The
if you wanted
mitigation,
to. Not the whole 19 acres, but the sections that are, you know, within the wetland or within 100 feet of, which is still nothing to snuff your nose at.
What are you suggesting? I didn't follow you, I'm sorry.
Well, I was just saying that if you decided to allow that encroachment into the 25-foot zone, you'd have to do it as a policy variance. And how do you do that? What's your rationale?
Yeah, I don't think we've got a good rationale for it, you know, particularly, I would think there's something you can do to reconfigure that slightly without destroying the entire project.
Yeah, I mean, I know we talked about it last time, but I left here with the understanding that we had agreed that it was within it, but within that field, and the mitigation offset it.
Well,
I
see,
would have to go back and see the meeting.
we have generally had a policy that there is no mitigation offset within 25 foot of the,
Although it's field already, even if it's undisturbed.
only because the gentleman behind you had the same problem, and the people that came just before you had the same problem.
And the police station had the
Yeah.
same problem.
So it's hard, and, you know, a detention pond is not the hardest thing in the world to reconfigure to make it fit, move it back 5 feet or something versus, having to give up an entire project because, you didn't have enough floor space, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think we could maybe look at reconfiguring it. I don't know standing here that it functions the way it's designed to right now, but.
No. I think we almost have to, I mean, I can, we have to at least look at that, and I'm not trying to be hard to get
No,
along
I
with.
just
It's
wish I
just-
had known that last time.
Well, as you recall, when you were here last
Do you have
time,
any of your notes?
It wasn't in my notes, cause I heard the same thing that Travis heard.
That's my bad, cause that's what I heard too.
But still, that's, it did come up. So, and Bob has a valid point.
Yeah.
well, the other thing, being honest, Travis, is when you were here last presenting it to us, it was an informal presentation, as I recall, because you hadn't been approved by the planning board or anything else, so it was more a general discussion about the project at that time, as I recall.
Well, we submitted a notice of intent and public hearing. I think it was more than an informal meeting, but.
How many feet off is it?
So I'm trying to gauge, I mean, you're probably talking 8 feet, 7 or 8 feet. Yeah, probably 7 or 8 feet. But you're losing the width of that basin, which shrinks it, and like I said, standing here, I don't know if that works at that point.
Well, what you gotta do is you gotta do your due diligence and do everything you can to try and reconfigure it to be outside the 25-foot. If you absolutely positively can't do it, you gotta make the statements saying so, you know, like kind of statement that you put your stamp on. And you come back to the commission and say, we absolutely positively can't do it. We'd still like to keep it, and this is why, and this is what we're offering up in this place, which would be all the mitigation.
I think that's the idea,
I
right?
know that's the
We're-
idea, but you still, I think the commission's asking you to put in a diligent effort to go back to the office and look at it as carefully as you can and see what can be done. Am I wrong? Yeah.
What would you like to continue to?
Next meeting?
What is the date of the next meeting?
20th?
Make a motion to continue to June 20th at
7:30.
that's
7:15.
7:15.
Bob?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Just for the record, Travis, I still can't open those PDFs.
I sent TIFs after that. Could you open those image files, individual
I
image
did
files?
not see those
I
PDFs.
sent them right after.
I did not see those PDF. I open it, I click to the second page, I click to the third page, and then it flips back to the first page.
Okay.
Just,
Yeah, I broke it out as TIFs and sent them individually. Maybe you didn't get it.
I did not get the test.
I apologize.
Not a problem, I just want to keep you abreast. I'm sure that I'm the only one having the problem, right?
Well, that's the first I've heard, but.
On the first
I get
one,
Pat's all right, his PDFs go into all right.
47 Carrier Lane, need to sign the order and the plan.
to Sutton Road continue?
No, they moved it.
Well,
No, Glenn,
no,
He's on his
Glenn
way.
is on his way.
He's on his way, yeah.
He
You wanna
asked
table it?
me to,
while he's here?
he asked me to move it down in the meeting. So you, whatever's next, 'cause I wrote in, project update,
Yeah, Pat.
because we've got Merrill Pond that's continued, which you'll just have to continue it when the time at 7:45.
Well,
Yes.
then can we talk about 11 Pleasant Valley Road?
Okay, at the 7:30 meeting, they've asked to move it to 8:15 because he had a conflict with another meeting. We have to wait, or can we do the project update now, because
You can do
it's,
the project update
Yes.
now, because it's not advertised.
okay. Here's this one, Wanda.
Good evening.
Good evening.
For the record, Patrick Doherty with Point Engineering here on behalf of Galaxy Pass LLC for the Phase 3 of the Pleasant Valley Crossing Shopping Center project. I guess over the fall and winter, we had gone through the public hearing process, and we had closed the process, and order of condition was issued. One of the conditions was to continue monitoring some test pits and wells that we had installed, and adjust the underground recharge system if necessary. So we did that monitoring. I can't say it was probably the best and or worst spring to be monitoring groundwater. Best being groundwater is at very, very high levels, so there's no chance that we'll be into this system. But the worst being, we are adjusting the underground chamber system. So I had submitted a revised set of site plans, and the revisions were just in the underground chamber system. This was reviewed by Graves Engineering through the planning board, all the hydraulic calculations necessary with it. And basically what we did, if you recall, we had this is the proposed plan, the revised plan. Our site drainage drains to a large underground chamber system which discharges to the intermittent stream. We had done 3 test pits, 1, 2, and 3, and we had monitored those test pits. The original design of the system was kind of a rotated perpendicular to what we're showing now, running parallel with the building, and it was a 9x14 chamber configuration. We monitored the groundwater. Test pit 2, which was always kind of in the middle of where the system was designed, that had consistent readings that were lower than the other 2, which still seems kind of odd to me. I can understand that test pit 3, rising with the brook, but test pit 1 must be some kind of a mounding, and then we've got another well that was Wilkinsonville Water District well that is much lower than any of the 3 readings. So in any case, we rotated the system, reconfigured it to be narrower, and centered it over test pit 2. I did a couple other changes. The bottom of the stone was at elevation 412. I've raised that to 413.25. Rather than 15 inches of stone under the system, I'm placing 9 inches, so the bottom of the chambers rises from 413.25 to 414. When I reconfigured it to go the long way, I had to also make some minor adjustments to the grading. There's minimum requirements for fill above these systems, and we were right at the limit in the old configuration. So I raised this portion of the parking lot by about 1.5 feet, and created a pitch and relocated the 2 bases. Also, the piping changed a little bit when it was in a parallel configuration. We had 2 inlets, 1 on either side. Because we're running perpendicular now, we've changed it to 1 inlet. The reason I bring that up is because we had 2 water quality units from each direction that were smaller units, and we're piping them through one larger water quality unit. That also has been reviewed by Graves Engineering. So that was kind of the changes to the site plan that I had submitted in the site plans, I think a couple of weeks ago. Since that time, the contractor has made a request to replace the water quality unit that we had specified with a different manufacturer that's supplied by the same company that he orders all his pipe from. So we had specified a Storm Scepter OSR 390, and he's requesting that we be able to change that to a First Defense 6 HC. I went through the different, they both work on the same principles of the hydrodynamic separation. They both have gone through the TARP protocol and are certified by New Jersey and therefore Massachusetts. And the sizings are pretty similar. So, we also requested that, and I think I did that through email just a few days ago. So I guess other than that, for the overall update, since that time, other than the monitoring, we have secured at least 2 of the tenants. We've got Fresenius Healthcare, which is kidney dialysis, that's going to occupy the end unit of the building, which we had always called out as medical use. For the middle space, we've got a child party / play company called Love to Play. It gives the ball pits and the slides and all the games and places for parents to spend lots of money. We've started construction. We had a pre-construction meeting, I think last Tuesday. We've installed the erosion controls. I know that Joyce, I think you did go to the site and speak with our contractor and had questioned the erosion controls along the roadway, I think along the back lot. And he had asked me for that substitution. We installed the 12-inch cotton biodegradable sediment control barrier along the brook, along the resource area at the limit of work. He requested to change it along the perimeter road in the back, mostly because those are eventually going to be taken up and removed completely, not split open. In addition, the one along the road, we've placed it right against the curb pretty much for now, as he's doing his site cuts, but that eventually will have to move in once we relocate that road. So that's going to be moved during construction. That the mesh straw wattles is a little bit hardier and a little bit easier to move. And he didn't just do that on his own. He did send that through me. I probably should have brought this to commission, but that's kind of how that
Well, I saw them, and we don't allow those.
mm-hmm.
And so my point is, how can people going by see them and say, oh, they've got the ones that we can't use? But it's outside of our jurisdiction, so, but I still would rather see the other ones there because
We
of,
just told Mr. McGovern
yeah,
the same thing.
yeah. Well, no, his was in jurisdiction, wasn't it?
Yeah, but
Right,
he
wanted
came
to
into
change them to the
Yeah,
biomesh
yeah.
in jurisdiction.
In jurisdiction.
in jurisdiction.
So this is, I just want the public to be clear that they do have the correct ones in our jurisdiction. They use the other ones for their own benefit outside of our jurisdiction.
Well, that's kind of my update. I did just today submit to one. I don't know if it got to the commission. Kind of
No.
milestone schedule. But I can kind of just go through it if you're interested. Basically for the next 5 weeks, 5 or 6 weeks, the site's cut now. We're starting to do some utility work. It's going to take about 5 or 6 weeks. Right as soon as that's done, the site will be filled to subgrade, and then the road will be relocated. That'll bring us to about mid July. At that time we'll start the building construction, and there'll be some kind of a break between building starting and resuming the site. But in essence, we're trying to wrap this up by November or December of this year.
So you're asking for this as a field change, am I?
We're asking for the field change for the system.
Couple of questions before you vote on it. Does this change the O&M plan at all?
No.
And just for the record, are you increasing the limits of disturbance at all?
No. The only changes were the, you know, a little bit of modification of the grading, and then the underground system configuration in height, and then, you know, the underground piping to it, so.
But it has the same capacity,
It's got a larger capacity, yeah.
larger capacity.
Yeah, because I think 9x16 is like 2 chambers, or 9x14 is 2 chambers less than 8x16. Or the other way around.
Bob?
I guess on the water quality structure, has Graves weighed in on that, Jeff?
No, you know what, I meant to follow up with Jeff. You know, he initially didn't have a problem, he was gonna look more into it. I did, when the manufacturer actually called me, because I haven't specified this product, and, you know, he wanted to introduce it to me, but he did note that this unit has been installed in Sutton before, so it is approved by New Jersey, and it's all over Massachusetts, so, you know, the only question would be, I guess, on the sizing, and, you know, it's very clear to me that it's appropriate, so, you know, I'm just gonna wait to hear back from Jeff.
No, you know, for me, I think we're gonna defer to Jeff's recommendation anyhow.
Right.
One way or the other. That's all I have.
Andy?
Yeah, everything looked good to me. I actually asked about the wattles because we did have people asking about the non-biodegradable wattles, but other than that, I think everything was.
Yes, you caused us problems.
Is the loan going off-site?
Excuse me?
Is the loan going off-site?
Eventually, well, he's got, he is stockpiling here now. I think he's trying to make some kind of a deal to trade loan for structural fill.
Yeah, it's getting trucked out now.
Yeah, is it getting trucked out
Yeah.
now? Okay, so
And that's
he was trucking
being
it.
trucked out through Pleasant Valley or the other way?
Pleasant Valley Road is where all the trucking has been going, but it was trucked out through Pleasant Valley Road. There is somewhat of a stockpile here. I believe that that's going to be reused on the site, and then the massive amount that has come up, I think there was about 1.5 feet and up to 2.5 feet of
Good stuff.
topsoil in some.
Nice
some
and
areas.
dark.
It was nice and dark.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, good.
You have to vote.
Is it a minor field change, Rich?
Yes.
Make a motion to issue a minor field change?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much.
All right, so what should happen is that, this is gonna be in the minutes, but there should also be some kind of note put into the file that makes it a little more easier to find that this was okay. And who knows when the certificate of compliance is gonna come in, everybody can be gone, you know?
What about that thing that has to be equal to what you had proposed in the first place?
Storm scepter.
Storm scepter.
Yeah.
You know, you know, we're not gonna obviously install or order it until Jeff weighs back.
Okay.
You know, so if Jeff is okay, I assume that this commission's okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Glenn's here.
Let's continue the 7:45 one and then go back to Glenn.
Make a motion to continue Merrill Ponds to 7/18 at 7 PM.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Mr. Krawski was on at 7:30, asked to be moved to 8:15, but he's here now, so I guess you're on, Mr. Krawski, for 382 Sutton Road.
Thank you very much, Conservation Commission. Glenn Kowalski from EBT Environmental and Mr. Steve LaFleur, the owner of the property. I believe at the last meeting there, we had already moved the septic system away from the 100-foot buffer zone and 100-foot inner riparian zone. We had very good perks up in the back, put the septic back there. There was several changes and additions the commission wanted to see on the plan. We'll start over here. One was the placards along Mr. Banoff had requested that along this boundary also, there be monuments, and so now they're every 50 feet apart, and they say limit of field and exotic plant removal. There was, that's a slight modification from your placard. We will have those made, and that will be at the edge of our field where, and then after that, there's this narrow strip of property where the river is located, the headwaters of the Mumford, which some people, I thought an interesting point, that this is still called the Mumford that high up.
It is, yes.
Yes, it's the very headwater and
Yes,
it's still called
yep.
the Mumford.
And it goes
Yeah.
into some reservoirs that are called like, there's some little ponds, pond
Yeah,
number 1, pond number 2.
Hotel Pond and
Yeah.
then Singletary
Yeah.
Rod at the top, and Gun.
Mhm.
The only piece of the Blackstone drainage in Oxford. So that's that. It is perennial, there's the riverfront. We will say that out of, well, we'll go for each monument. This is the second monument, it's a granite monument, 4x4, with detail, limit of lawn. We can have that placard made. We, Mr. Bob Teff had, and the commission apparently agreed to put the monuments along the limit of grading and just keep that limit of work, the silt fence line 5 feet off of the limit of grading, which, we will say that one point, Jake, the engineer, did not get 5 feet, it's on it, but it's only one small point if that's not a problem. And another point that Mr. Taft, I believe, brought up, it could have been another member, and it's the only thing I believe that we do not see on the plan, it's the slurry sump for the well drilling. I did sketch it in. We will take a condition that it has to be on there. I can initial a plan. We can take a photograph of the sump before we drill the well. We'll do anything that the commission would want to make sure that we build, normally I have them 10-foot diameter on here, 2 feet deep. It's just a backhoe hole, and it lets that slurry go into it instead of going across the field. So we do recognize that one point. The trees, you required 2.5-inch caliper plus, red maples along the roadway to make up for the red spruce and the dying white ash. And so I had the engineer space them out along the frontage. Again, we do have a note talking about moving this piece of stone wall over here, and we already talked about rebuilding the wall in similar fashion to what's out there in keeping with this scenic road. Splash pad, tire scrub, excuse me. Lawn, Mr. Franoff did want this to be called, there was several names, we chose hayfield instead of mowed field, because he was concerned that somebody saw the word mow and then would start mowing it more often. We do recognize that perpetual conditions under the certificate of compliance, and the condition would be then cited. Either you put in the order, what special condition it is, what number it is. There's several ways. We talked to MACC on those conditions in perpetuity. About the exotic invasive.
As I've learned in the past.
Yes, sir.
You have to put in the word in perpetuity.
Yes. Well, we just went through it in Sturbridge, and Auburn was not aware of it, and so we delved into it for another project,
Yeah.
the perpetuity issue. MACC has comments on it, too.
Yeah, I used the word eradicate once when it came to invasive species, and it didn't hold up.
Okay.
So it has to be, the wording has to be in perpetuity, that's the safest way to do it.
Thank you, we understand it. We did identify the other areas of exotic invasive removal, which will be made into both field, which is this area, and this area. The 95% of the plants in there now are multiflora rose, autumn olive, and Tartarian honeysuckle, and oriental bittersweet. There's a little bit of Japanese barberry in there, but once we make it into, these are just grown over field, these two areas here, and that area, we'll continue to maintain it as field, and we'll mow it at the regularity that we talked about earlier, which was August, it was July 15th and then August 1st, 2 dates. If you choose the date in your order, we'll know which one we have to abide by. We did Coltech, as you know, we talked about it before, there's calcs for this, there's 5 of them now, with calculations showing that we're infiltrating the roof, we're infiltrating the driveways with the same calcs. 1 foot by 1 foot deep, 1 foot wide, 1 foot deep, crushed stone trench to take that water and put it back in the ground. I think and we already went through the merger clause at last meeting, and pre-existing lots, and DEP, and concluding
Yep.
on that. I think we
We're
covered.
also with the riverfront
Okay,
issues.
okay.
Yeah. You're correct in your assessment of how it's done.
Thank you.
Not at the bottom of the grading, so you're gonna have granite bounds that come up 6 inches, and you're gonna have a plaque on top of that?
Yes, sir.
So how is that gonna be fixed to a granite?
They're just, not like the way they fixed that ceilings on the tunnel where it dropped up the
Yeah.
lady. But there is that two-phase glue that actually is very strong, it adheres to stone, and we have done, in Worcester, we've done it, it lasts, well, we could drill it in if you wanted to, but that was the way we're gonna glue it on, with a two-phase, high-strength glue. If there was another way that the commission, if the commission wants us to research it a little bit more, again, there are, we could always, drill through it and put a tap in there, but I don't know if that's going more than we wanna see.
Question is that, I haven't seen this particular way of doing it. Not necessarily opposed to it, especially when it's so close to people's houses, and there have been complaints about people not wanting to see the sign so close to the house and next to the lawn. So it might be a alternative that could be used in the future, but I don't know what the commission's opinion on this particular form of demarcation, cause it hasn't come up before. What do you think?
Could I raise one more? I'm in Santa Barbara, I'm in a few places where I've actually taken the pictures of, where they do put the marker on top of the granite to tell you that this is a storm drain and don't dump stuff down because it goes to the ocean.
Mhm.
So it's not like these type of these hardened plastic haven't been used. I know some people stencil, I've actually seen them, and I've taken photographs when I'm at these different locations of the plastic, because it's not being plowed either there, but also glued down on top of the smooth granite. Or actually, it's rough, so the rough surface is glued to the placket, but just to make a mention that I've seen it before on granite.
Well, that's fine, it's the concept of it though.
I like it better.
Yeah, I'm all right with it.
I think it's a somewhat of a unique situation on this particular lot, because you've got almost double row of signs on it, and these row of signs are primarily just distinguishing between an individual's lawn and a hayfield that he will be able to cut once or
Yeah.
twice a year. So I feel it's a little different. I don't think we're setting a precedent at this point, that it's probably appropriate for this site.
Okay. So you get thumbs up on that.
Thank you.
So I'm okay with everything else, and we have a final revision date of 5/15. Or is it best?
We would just check that, please. Jason Dubois, or was even that later than that? Yes, sir.
Okay. Have you submitted full-size plans to the commission?
Yes, I have them here, I'm sorry, I do have them, and the only revision, I submitted the ones with just before you asked for the hay change. So you have full size, I know Mr. Teff, 7 days before, we emailed them 7 days before, we sent them to you, and you had the comments just on the hay. There was a word H-E-Y in there that the engineer, and,
Right.
and then there was another one about mowing the hayfield, and you wanted,
Right,
you wanted
right.
to get rid of the mow. So yes, they do not have these final revisions, which just came out this morning.
So that's it,
This is it.
okay?
This has the, no hay.
You all want to stamp them in?
Good.
One for you, one for me. In the future, 3.
I'll give you mine.
One.
Two for the commission, so you can have one on
Yeah,
that
we
end,
can
one on
always
this
make-
end, and I can have one.
We, well, when we're finished talking, if we are, well, I'll give you this one. If we're all set.
Discussion also.
Yeah, take this.
Thank you.
Bob?
What?
What's that? Andy?
Make a
Bill?
motion to close the public hearing.
All those in favor?
Aye. Make a motion to issue a order of conditions for 382 West Sutton Road.
Thank you very much.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. You jumped the gun a little.
That's okay.
Have a good night.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for all your time and patience on this one. Thank you.
Good night.
Have a good summer. Hope to see you before then. Thank you.
recuse. I sit on the board in Manchester Pond.
Okay.
Where are we now?
Manchog Pond, as soon as
Oh,
wanted to finish his folding plans.
Yeah.
where would you like to be? Over there by the, music or keys over there?
Yeah, we need to sign these.
What was going on in the corner of Partridge Hill and Hunter's Court? Do you remember? There's like a catch basin up there or something? One of my friends lives over there. He was asking, I guess they got some chain link fence going up.
Mr. Burns is here.
Oh,
I'll take some.
Okay, these need to be signed. These are the 382. Those need to be signed. What's this one?
That's 11 Pleasant Valley. You can sign those too, Bill.
Yeah, you can sign it. This is just the extra step.
Thank you.
Okay, this one needs to be read in. So we're done with all the- Oh, we'll have to look at those after.
Okay, this is 8 o'clock. Manchog Pond has filed an NOI for aquatic treatment. Sutton Conservation Commission will hold a public hearing on Wednesday, June 6th, 2018, at 8 p.m. at the Sutton Town Hall, 4 Exridge Road, Sutton, Mass. Purpose of this hearing is to review a notice of intent submitted to the Conservation Commission by Jesse Lemanick, Town of Sutton, Mass. Project consists of the aquatic management program to control nuisance and non-native plant growth utilizing treatment with US EPA/Mass State Registered Aquatic Herbicides, algicides, diver-assisted suction harvesting, and other BMPs on Manchog Pond, Sutton, Mass. This notice is publicized in accordance with the provisions of General Law, Chapter 131, Section 40, commonly known as the Wetlands Protection Act and the Sutton Wetlands Protection Bylaw. Good evening.
Commission. Do I need to speak directly into that, or is it just kind of picking up?
Yeah,
No, okay,
No.
great, thanks, just making sure. I'd like to thank the commission for holding this hearing and listening to this aquatic plant management program we're proposing for Manchog Pond. It's been filed on behalf of the Manchog Pond Foundation, in conjunction with the Board of Selectmen, from the town. A concurrent filing has been filed with the Douglas Conservation Commission, as the water body is in both towns. My
could you
name's-
introduce yourself?
My name is Matt Salem. I am the permit coordinator and GIS specialist at Solitude Lake Management. We are a full-service lake management company. We've been around in managed water bodies in New England for over 30 years, kind of in some form of the company or another. We've managed everything from small golf course ponds up through Lake Singletary in town, and even in greater scale, up to Lake Winnipesaukee and Saratoga Lake. To kind of go into some of the site characteristics of Manchog Pond, it's about 300 acres, and the littoral zone, the shoreline area that receives kind of sunlight through the water column to the bottom, supports beneficial native species, but there are also areas of dense invasive species, primarily fanwort and variable water milfoil. There's an emergent wetland invasive species, Phragmites australis, that it has kind of a pioneer infestation near the boat ramp, and we're looking to manage the invasive species in addition to kind of the native species, the problematic and nuisance native vegetation, in addition to algae. Currently, there aren't concerns by the foundation regarding algae, but when we're filing something like this, we want to be able to have all the tools in the toolbox per se. So we are requesting the use of algicides in addition to kind of the other strategies to manage the invasive and native vegetation. This is filed as an ecological limited restoration project, so in addition to the strategies that we are proposing, specifically herbicides and algicides, all the herbicides and algicides are registered and approved by the US EPA and Mass Department of Agricultural Resources. In addition to those, we are proposing hand harvesting, which is what it sounds, having divers pull up the plants and put them in a dive bag. Benthic barriers, which is kind of putting localized areas of tarpon or synthetic material that will kind of inhibit the vegetation's growth due to blocking the sunlight. Those strategies are both smaller scale techniques that are applicable for either small pioneer infestations or also kind of localized areas, say in front of someone's dock or in high use areas that just the vegetation is. The herbicides that we are proposing to utilize are fluoridone, trade name Sonar, Diquat, trade name Reward, and flumioxazin, trade name Clipper. The latter two are contact herbicides. Fluoridone is a systemic herbicide. Those would be used to manage both the invasive species, both submersed invasive species, in addition to the nuisance native vegetation growth. Glyphosate was also requested, trade name AquaPro, that would be used as a foliar spray to manage the invasive common reed patches. And additionally, we're seeking approval for the use of peroxide or copper-based algicides to manage algae should the need arise in the years going forward. Lastly, kind of the oversight for these types of projects is immense, I feel. Between the US EPA and Mass Department of Agricultural Resources reviewing and approving herbicides and algicides every 15 years. We have to file a site-specific license to apply chemicals through the Mass Department of Environmental Protection Office of Watershed Management. They make sure that the herbicides and algicides we're proposing to utilize are being applied within the approved concentrations and rates on the label. In addition, all of our full-time staff is licensed with the Mass Department of Agricultural Resources as commercial applicators, and the water body isn't within natural heritage habitat. There is one just offshore on the eastern shoreline, but doesn't enter the water. And at this time, I know there are some other members from the Manchog Pond Foundation. If they have any comments, I welcome them, and then questions and comments from the commission.
Is this the first time they've used this in Manchog?
To my knowledge, yes.
Yes, because I remember, we kind of approved for Singletary every year, and this is the first time I remember for Manchog. So would this be an ongoing thing?
This is the first NOI for aquatic vegetation management in Manchog?
Yes.
I think, to my knowledge, yes.
But has aquatic vegetation ever been managed in Manchog?
Not to my knowledge, or not through us. We, two companies, Lycott and Aquatic Control Technology, Lycott had been performing kind of biennial surveys, maybe more off, or maybe less often than biennial, to kind of see the growth of the vegetation, but no, I don't think there's actually ever been any active management of the invasive species at the pond.
No, I don't ever remember anything from the Manchog Pond Association before for aquatic management. Want to state your name here and,
Phyllis Charpentier, I'm the clerk with the Manchog Pond Foundation, corresponding secretary. Back in 1990, we had our first aquatic plant survey with Lycott, and variable milfoil and fanwort were identified at that time. Lee Lyman recommended lake level drawdown, so we worked with the subsequent dam owners on lake level drawdown. So we've been employing that method all these decades. The last 4 years with our present dam owner, the lake hasn't been drawn down quite as much as it usually has. So we're working with the current dam owner, the town of Sutton, to get back to those historical levels for the winter drawdown. We also explored last year and the year before diver-assisted harvesting to take out a few beds of the fanwort and the variable milfoil, and we found that we needed a permit for that. So we have a committee that's actually researching, putting together our own boat, so that we can have our own diver-assisted harvesting boat. We did try to hire a company that was working on Wachusett, but they didn't have time to fit us in last year. And we found out we need a notice of intent for that as well. We found out, we haven't done anything.
I was about to say, you did what?
We researched.
Very good.
So lake level drawdown has been the method of controlling the invasive species we have. We also have Asian clam, which the drawdown takes care of. I think we picked that up from, what's the lake?
so the previous owners actually did some good in helping to prevent all of these invasives.
They worked with us on the timing of the drawdown. They definitely worked with us, timing and how far it would go down, so, yes. And we're working on getting back to that level too.
So will this probably be a every year plan, every other year plan, or are you just gonna wait and see how often you need it?
Well, we're looking at, right now we have our own survey teams, 2 teams that survey, and we're doing that annually. We're looking at the diver-assisted harvesting boat as a ongoing effort. And then we have only approved the herbicide treatment through Solitude for this year. So it's kind of a
Can I
initial
just give
trial.
some information? Singletary Lake, there's, Dean McNamara contacts me every year to do, like an extension on the order for when they do their aquatic every year. And I think they'll be doing it like, it's usually at the end of July, beginning of August. and it's like they'll close the lake for one day and then do the aquatic, and then the animals can't drink out of it for a week. So every year you would contact me, it's a short 2-page thing you can fill out, and contact me and send it to me, and then it would be on record that it's being done every year.
They'd have to have a management plan first, right?
Yeah, once you
With
get through the
With the
order
drawdown
conditions.
details and all that.
Yeah, and I think there might be a rule curve on your drawdown also,
There is a
like
rule.
there is.
There's a real quick, but what you said is that it's not
Yes.
getting drawn down as much as it used to. Why is that?
Well,
The
we
reason,
have,
so the reason why I ask has to do with impact avoidance and minimization. So, were you having problems with invasive species when it was being drawn down, just aquatic vegetation, when it was being drawn down even further?
well, we've had those, I'm sorry, we've had those two, invasive species since 1990.
Yeah.
So we were getting a level of control from the drawdown, yes.
So it was fairly effective, and it wasn't to the point where people were really complaining about it. So then the question is, well, I'm not against herbicides, but if you can avoid herbicides, that's great. So the question is, well, if it was working, if the lower drawdown was working before, why can't it be done now? Because it seems like a pretty simple solution, like take another slat out instead of having to do all this expense and potential environmental harm.
The way I understand it is they wanna hit it with herbicides one time and then try to drain it down more in the upcoming years, is that what you're getting at?
Yes,
So the initial plan is to utilize the floridone, which is a systemic, so we're actually killing the roots of the vegetation this year, so that in subsequent years, the infestation isn't as much, and so it can be managed kind of through spot treatments like they've been doing out at Singletary. I mean, I grew up on Singletary, and I've seen kind of I think we treat somewhere less than 20 acres every year.
I thought that was you.
And so, through kind of the active management, and Singletary is doing a drawdown. They do lower the water, off the top of my head, I'd say at least 4 feet, but I'm not. And so I think the combination of all the management techniques, it's an integrated program. We're not looking to just do this once and then it's done. I think with through the foundation, the association, they're looking to actively manage it, whether it's through targeted spot treatments in the high use areas of the water body, the diver-assisted suction harvesting, the benthic matting. That combination is the plan. It's not, we're just gonna try one thing. We have the experience and the knowledge and the science to kind of back it up to where we're not trying a specific, we're not trying to see what will work. We're basing this on the state's guidance and our own experience as to how to best manage these species, this invasive vegetation, to get them to a point where eradication is a taboo word in the industry. You can't eradicate an invasive. You can try really hard, you can manage it, but once it's been established,
In a lake anyway.
yeah, in a lake, it gets down to management. And if you can manage 50 acres this year, and next year you're managing it down to 40, and you're kind of managing less and less until it is kind of the level of Lake Singletary, which has been going on since.
My question is just, can all the problems go away if we just draw it down more? To like 4 years ago? Would that just solve everything?
You're gonna be significantly impacting the fish community. I don't know how deep they were drawing it down. I remember the summer, probably 10 years ago.
It's a
that-
twofold thing, is impact avoidance, right? So, do we have to put herbicides in there? Do we have to do the benthic matting? Do we have to do suction? You know, as far as impact is involved, and I guess the secondary, you know, there's an expense involved with that, so it's a lot cheaper to just draw the water down further in the wintertime, and would that just negate having to do all these other things? So that's, I mean, what's your opinion on that?
The native, as we've seen in Singletary, with drawdowns, you can effectively manage the milfoil and fanwort from the area that gets drawn down. But that's only Singletary, call that 10 feet out from shore. And beyond that, you end up with the native species, which propagates through seeds. We've seen those aren't impacted by the annual drawdown.
The native species aren't.
The native pondweeds, and the native pondweeds end up becoming, reaching nuisance level densities because they now don't have the competition of the invasive, which is great, but it is kind of, the dense growth of that isn't desirable either.
Not being a boater on Manchog Pond, I'd like to ask the question to anybody who does on a regular basis and lives in boats on the pond. How bad is a problem, how bad are native pondweeds for being a nuisance? Are they that expansive that this kind of treatment is necessary?
Well,
State your name and address.
Dave Schmidt, 48 Bigelow Road, Douglas, president of the Manchog Pond Foundation. The board of directors has represented each area on the pond and through vote has established that we do have an issue that is beyond being a nuisance. That it has increased over surveys over the last couple of years, and concern that we need a toolbox of, and that's why the different mattings and the harvesting and different approaches are talked about here, because we feel that we need a toolbox of.
So you need the toolbox, and you think that just a drawdown or even a further drawdown if it was more than 4 years ago doesn't do it?
Yeah, I don't think it will completely do it, no, I think it will, all aspects will help, all different approaches. That's why we came in front of council.
In what way is the vegetation a nuisance?
We can pick it up and carry it with our motorboats to different sections of the pond.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's at the end of people's docks. It's in our shallow coves. We've seen it get a little bit more plentiful each year. But go ahead.
I was gonna say, if you look at Manchog, you know, it has the two legs there at the south, there's a campground
Yeah.
in each cove, so where the dam is on the right and on the left,
Mm-hmm.
there's another campground, and then at the north, the inlet, there's a campground there. So those coves tend to have, you know, it's shallow, it's, you know, less than 5 feet. So there's more weeds there. And what people will do, take their boat from the campground and they go to what we call West Cove. There's the island kind of in the center, and they'll go to the west there and park the boat, anchor. So what we've seen is that cove get more and more weeds because they're just coming from the weedy coves, going there, anchoring out, and then
And
the-
spreading it?
Yes.
So it's a problem spreading it to different coves? We're talking about the native vegetation, the invasive?
No, I'm talking about the
The
invasive.
invasive, okay,
Yes.
all right.
There is pondweed in that cove on the aquatic plant survey team too,
Mhm.
and
Yeah,
there are
the
pondweeds there.
invasive, the invasive stuff, I'm 100% with you. I'm thinking more of like the native vegetation that you say is not effectively killed by a drawdown.
Well, what we've seen in the northern cove there where Holbrook's campground is, We had quite a bit of fan water, we had a great drawdown
Mhm.
one year. It was cold, the lake was frozen. We had like one small bed of fan water, but the tape grass, the native tape grass
Mhm.
covered the entire, which wasn't
Yeah.
a problem.
Vallisneria americana. It's good stuff. It's an indicator of good water quality too.
I would imagine with a public boat dock too, that would bring things in, but if there was a lot of it there, could also take it out and spread it to other places.
Yes, so
Again,
our
yeah.
boat ramp, the state boat ramp is on the southern right leg there, yes. So we get on a Sunday afternoon, it's jam-packed full, overflowing. People are riding around Parker Torrey Road waiting for spots to open up. And we'll get the overflow from Webster Lake, so when their ramps are
Well, they'll come
full,
to
they
you.
come to us.
Right.
So they launch and then they, go park at that sandbar, Blueberry Island or West Cove.
Used to be Blueberry Island, used to have actual blueberries on it.
Yes, yes, it was forested, part of the mainland.
Why is the drawdown less than it used to be? Is it a fire hydrant issue?
It's more a new dam owner,
The town versus,
the town took
Manchog
it
Pond.
over as opposed to the mill owning it. The town, the actual dam caretaker that actually regulates the mechanism and the flashboards, I think a learning curve.
Okay,
getting a
so there's
feel
no
for the
reason
dam.
that they don't.
There's no reason, getting a feel for it. Also recognizing the fact that once you let the water out, you can't recapture it, unless it's by runoff or, so a little more cautious, maybe letting it out, but, it's been, I think, more of just a learning curve as to how fast we fill up in the spring and all that.
I guess what I'm getting at is that I would hate to see you guys spend all that money on herbicides and then it not get drawn down to an appropriate level to help on the winter months as well.
Right, I did speak with Jim Smith, March 1st, and he gave us complete support and commitment that the town will bring it back down to the historical levels before the town assumed ownership back to
Okay,
the
that's good to know.
Do you have a measurement on what that,
Yes, the former dam owner had all, the measurements
I think that's
weekly.
key to your operation, I think that,
Yes,
well, you weren't here before when we went through the whole thing about the dam and
No,
basically it was
right.
drawn down to nothing to kind of bribe the town to buy the dam.
right, I remember that.
I think we could have gotten a whole lot more money from them than we did.
Right.
They would have paid us $1 million, but we didn't get that. We got, what, 100,000?
we received 350,000, but the other lake that was owned, actually had to buy their dam, so we did well
Yeah.
in negotiating that. But what happened when they took us down in May, we had a fish kill before
Yes.
the May, June spawning, and also that's when our common reeds came in along the shore. during
Yeah,
that low
the trout
summer.
count coming in on the north side, they kind of left them high and dry.
Yes, that
Um,
leg, to the west, where Lake Manchard Camping is, we have a certified, cold water fishery with trout, certified by Mass Wildlife, so the connectivity
Coming
is
in,
very
coming into the
important.
pond.
Coming into the
This
pond.
on the Douglas side?
Yes,
Yeah.
yep, the leg there.
Yeah, I don't know of any on the
furthest west.
Sutton side. So, talking about Douglas, this is a two-state pond, two-town pond. You doing the same exercise in Douglas?
2 weeks.
2 weeks.
Come join again. Yeah, so, I mean, hopefully we can kind of get similar, conditions between the two orders.
Well, that's one of the things I'm gonna recommend is holding off on a decision until Douglas gets us a chance to make comments and I can coordinate with them and see what they're thinking because it's it should.
Joint effort.
It's only polite to do that, and it'll end up with a better result in the end, I think. I have a few more questions.
Yeah.
Okay, that answers that question. Okay. As far as the Wetlands Protection Act and our bylaws concerned, I'd like to know from you as a professional, with your current plan, how does your plan make sure that wildlife habitat, fisheries habitat, aquatic life habitat, and the recreational opportunities afforded in Sutton will not be adversely impacted?
So in the NOI, we've taken straight from the Practical Guide of Lake Management, which was produced for the Executive Office of Environmental Affairs. Those kind of, each herbicide and with respect to the 7 impacts of the Wetlands Protection Act were evaluated by the consultant that prepared it for the state and was approved by the state. So we're using that as our guidance. Off the top of my head, most of the herbicides and algicides proposed, in addition to the other management strategies, if they don't provide a direct benefit, are typically interpreted as having a neutral impact. A couple do have detriments when the products are utilized in a specific way. Copper, for instance, at high doses can be lethal to shellfish and sensitive fish species, and so the doses that they've kind of determined, again, this is through the EPA registration and through the Mass DAR, we can apply, they figure out what the maximum label rate is and what the the LE50 is of these products, and we're allowed to utilize magnitudes below them, and that's their maximum threshold.
So this will be my first lake management order, eventually, I presume. How does that get conditioned? Because I wanna make sure that you're applying these herbicides appropriately per the label and also per the per the law, whatever it may be, so that you're not having any adverse impacts to the water quality, the water column, the aquatic,
So-
fisheries and wildlife.
So the label is the law.
Right.
So we have to follow that. If we don't follow the
Well, there's
label,
the label, but there's also, you saying the state has some kind of thresholds too, that you can't go above, or is that also on the
they've
label?
tested at the EPA. They've registered it at the EPA. They don't have specific mass labels. New York does, because New York is difficult. But Mass has done the testing and registers it per the label.
So then I presume that the condition would be that all aquatic herbicides must be used according to the label.
Yeah.
And by doing that, it assures that you will.
To the label and the Office of Watershed Management license to apply chemicals. Those two things, the label is federal law, the license to apply chemicals, which is through the DEP, Office of Watershed Management.
The label, and what was the second thing you were saying?
License to apply chemicals, obtained through the Mass DEP, Office of Watershed Management.
We'll email about that.
Okay.
All right. And is there a lake management plan for Manchog in place?
Not a formal 5-year plan. I mean, they've been doing kind of regular, irregular surveys. We're just kind of starting to get the management of the invasives started, so, to answer, no, there is no formal
Is the
management.
lake management plan required for any part of, in order to do this?
I think we're gonna require it, aren't we?
That's up to you. I'm getting there.
Okay. I thought I'd shorten it up for you, that's all.
I mean, if that's the desires of the commission, but off the top of my head, I say no. There are lakes where we do not have full formal management plans.
I think it would be a good idea.
Will the lake be closed during the application of this for a day or two, like like Singletary?
Typically during the application, because we are applying herbicides and it just kind of avoids the unnecessary exposure. But all of the herbicides being proposed, the label does not require closure on the day of application. So you can go swimming. If some little Timmy fell in off the end of his dock, he will be fine. We post, I call them obnoxious orange signs around the lake, so that the public is informed. And again, with going through an association, is usually a lot better because they get the word out to their members and the people who live around the water body to, hey, the pond is being treated on next Tuesday, so it'll be open on Wednesday, at the high traffic areas for the public, like the boat ramp and, I jokingly say we litter the area with them because we want the public to know, because we want the public to be informed about, we are doing this, but also it saves kind of our admins in the office some trouble of answering phone calls because little Timmy fell in, is he gonna be okay?
What time of the year is this work done?
So the Floridome can be initiated from pre-emergence of the of the invasive vegetation through mid-July. After mid-July, a higher dose is required because the invasive vegetation has been growing. There's more biomass.
So you're saying that different herbicides may require different
Yes,
timings?
so ideally with Floridone, you're applying it earlier in the season as the invasive vegetation's growing. And through the timing, so applying it earlier, and the dose, usually less of a dose is less concentration is.
Well, you have a whole bunch of different herbicides listed in here, but Floridone is the one you're gonna use?
That is
primarily?
the one we want to start with, because it is systemic, so you're getting down to the roots, you're killing off future regrowth. Clipper or flumioxazin and diquat both are contact herbicides, so those only affect the portion of the plant that is in the water at that time. It does not, we have seen some translocation of diquat to the roots of variable water milfoil, primarily by not allowing the root crown to develop, so you end up with less of an infestation over time. But I would not consider that as systemic. So those types of treatments are usually conducted later when the vegetation is at half of its biomass, 3/4 of its annual biomass.
Yeah, I get you.
Okay.
I get you. Yeah.
You'll need to let the Board of Health and our office know when you're gonna apply it, when it's gonna happen.
Sounds like a great condition.
Yeah.
The only thing I'd add to it, I think it really is imperative to figure out about your historic drawdown level and what your proper fill level is, and get that on your plan.
We
Yeah,
have
in 2008
volumes of stuff
Yeah,
about the
yeah.
rule curve
Yeah, but
from-
they have to make a new plan.
Yeah.
They have to make a new
Well,
plan.
that's a good question. Is a new plan, a new rule curve gonna be necessary for Manchog? Because we went over this in detail back in, 07, 08, when we were going through all those problems. And the order of conditions, the superseding order of conditions from DEP, laid out very specifically how the slats need to be taken in and out,
Oh,
depending on, you know, the seasonality and whether or not there's a storm coming, and
Yeah.
it's very specific, so I'm presuming that that is the rule curve pre-town. And you'd be going
Something
back
like
to that,
16,
so maybe it might
something.
not be necessary.
yeah, that, I was the only
I'd like
one that
some
was here.
clarification on that. I think the commission should have some clarification on what, because the drawdown's related to the rule curve. So I think that should be really, someone should confirm that. Can you do that? Okay, thank you.
I remember something about 16.5, I think, but, right,
Yeah, me too.
yeah.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember the elevations, but I can conjure
I have
that
a
up. I could probably
box
conjure it up right now on my
sure.
computer, but we don't have time, I don't think.
Yeah, yeah, all that was done ad infinitum back then.
And how far it goes down, the lowest you're allowed, and then the highest you're allowed to bring it up. And then management during the year, like say there's a hurricane coming, or there's
Right. 3 days before.
Exactly,
Yes.
yeah. I just want confirmation that that is the curve, the rule that you're gonna be using. And I presume that would be what you wanna do, because you want it to come down lower, right?
Who actually does the boards?
The highway department.
The highway department?
Yes.
Does anyone educate the highway department on all of this stuff, or is it just somebody decides, oh, I'm gonna take a board out?
No, we're in communication and they're following, pretty closely what was done in the past. But they haven't taken it down as low. That's the only complaint.
Well, that's,
They're refilling on time, they're maintaining, you know, for healthy fisheries, for connectivity with the trout stream. They're doing
Yeah.
that all wonderfully. But just a little cautious about taking it down, because once the water's gone, I'm told you can't, you know.
well, my point was, does somebody understand this whole thing, or is it just done because they're doing it, you know, just,
Right.
somebody needs to understand the whole process, I think.
Probably should have been a little bit more proactive when the town took it over, but
Yeah,
it is what it is now. Yeah, I imagine Douglas, you know, they're gonna have questions, I'm sure, about drawdown, but the dam is in Sutton, so there's not much say they're gonna be able to have over that, so if they do ask the question, I would let them know that you are gonna be drawing it down further than it has in the last 4 years, and it's gonna be consistent with the rule curve that was established in 2008 under a superseding order of conditions with DEP.
Is this a new order of conditions?
What we're doing tonight?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So the other one, they closed out, or did that now have 2 order conditions on it?
The other one's on the dam.
If nothing's, yeah, probably should, you're right, you
Separate.
should probably update it to include the rule curve into this current, cause that's part of the whole planning, because it's not just the aquatic vegetation management, which, so it's like, no, Solitude is here for tonight, but it's also partly drawdown in the rule curve with dam, because it said you need a suite of management tools. So, this is one, and the condition would be the management of the levels of the water, just like it was in 2008. But that was more for recreational and wildlife habitat, and the, big fight with the private owner, but.
We did have to, provide Mac Briggs documentation that we did indeed have fan water as part of that order with the drawdown. He did request that from me.
We won't re-ask for that. I think it's imperative that we have a policy, so that it's not necessarily just a complete toolbox that, you can do anything you want, because, it's partially our responsibility, your responsibility, what it ends up doing out there, and rather than just say, well, hey, whatever you want. I think we need to know exactly what you will be doing.
And where?
And where, or policy, so to speak. I'd also think that you have to spell out the oversight, who's responsible for what, and, you know, how do we know that you are putting in 5 pounds per acre of herbicide or whatever versus,
So at the end of the year, we have to report to, once again, the Mass DEP Office of Watershed Management, what we're putting in, the quantities and the acreage that we're putting it in. If we're outside of what we're permitted, that's us breaking the law.
well,
So, right, so, I mean, there are all these, I understand your concern and what, but there are already these layers of oversight that.
all I need is a statement that those are the layers, okay, number one, all right? Just to go in the file so that when somebody looks at this, that's not as
Right, so.
up to date as you are on this kind of stuff, that, you know, that stuff's in there. The other thing I might ask, and I don't know how laborious it would be, is whether or not the town would be copied on those same, or the Lake Association, one or the other, would be copied on those same forms that you have to turn into the state to say that you did in fact do a
We can
proper.
provide the license to apply chemicals when it's received. We provide them to numerous commissions.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
an email, that's.
It's easy to copy everybody on it, so, yeah.
Yeah, I know that when pesticide applicator comes to my house every year and do their annual run-through, they're required by law to give you a slip stating every herbicide they used, every pesticide that they used and what amounts.
Mhm.
And I imagine this would be similar.
Yeah, I don't know, but I think something should be,
Well, if you just CC the commission on your reporting to the state.
yeah,
Or, yeah,
and
that's an Excel spreadsheet.
Probably in the town and the Manchog Pond Association
Yeah,
too.
everybody gets.
the other question I've got is for Brandon. Is this a 1-year, 2-year, 3-year, 5-year?
You know, that's a good
Renewable,
question. The orders and conditions are good for 3 years, but in certain situations, you can make them a 5-year order at the commission's discretion. The only time that this commission has ever done that was with the interstate reliability project with National Grid when they,
Yeah, but what do we do with Singletary?
Yearly, they notify us yearly with an extension.
Their order conditions is 3 years though. Every 3 years, they have to get a new extension to the order of
Well,
conditions.
in that
So-
case, that answers my
I
question. I
mean-
think we wanna be consistent that way, and the order condition, be
Well,
a 3-year order conditions.
And, well, to that extent, the extensions to the orders of conditions are only valid, they can only maximum be issued for 3 years. At the start, as explained, they're typically 3 years, but they can be issued up to 5. We are requesting issuance of 5. Like, the foundation, the association has interest in managing this going forward, so, I mean, as much fun as it is coming before the commission. If we can get 2 years out of it, we can get 2 years extra out of it, so,
I think,
at the commission's discretion, of course.
speaking for myself, I think we wanna be, if Singletary's got a 3-year, I think that's what we want here.
That's your
It's a
call.
3-year.
that's completely your call.
I know.
Well, I think Singletary, in essence, has more than a 3-year, because they have extensions.
And we will allow them extensions too, they just have to come in and request the extensions,
Yeah.
that's all.
Right.
I mean, it's not, a big ordeal, I don't think, but I think we gotta be
By
consistent.
email. He sends me the request, and then it gets signed.
Well, we want to continue to after these go to Douglas.
Mhm.
Sure.
I think that's appropriate, and what day are you going to Douglas, do you know off the top of your head?
2 weeks from this past Monday, so 18?
June 18th.
Yeah, 18.
Our meeting is the 20th.
So going to Douglas on 6/18, I'm gonna get in touch with them over there. I hear that the conservation agent, Steve Zisk, has been having some health problems. I don't know what their conservation agent situation is right now, but I'll check on it and see if they have the NOI, right, now?
Yeah, yeah,
So
it's
I'll see if they reviewed it, if they have any comments, and once the meeting happens, I'll follow up with them again and see, what they had to say, so this commission can be consistent.
Maybe a problem if you continue to the 20th, because Dan's not here tonight, I won't be here on the 20th, and Bill has to recuse himself.
Ooh, that's a
So
good
there's
point.
no
Well,
quorum.
there'll still be, yeah, there will be.
Will Dan be
Dan will
here?
be back.
Yeah, but he will have missed this meeting. But
Well, he can,
he can s-
he can check up, he
Yeah,
can
okay,
watch the video tape, read a minute, whatever it may be.
all right.
So it would be June 20th at 7:30.
Make a motion to continue to June 20th at 7:30?
Second, oh, I can't second it.
Okay, second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I was just gonna say, there's no sense of them coming in unless Douglas makes a determination on the 18th. If their meeting is continued on the 18th for discussion purposes, we're just,
Should we,
that's,
Then
that's
we-
the only point I'm making, but I don't know how you,
He's gonna try to coordinate with
Yeah, I would
Douglas.
try to coordinate with them, because they might have questions that no one in this room has thought of, and then I'll bring it up and we'll talk some more.
Do I need to sign anything? No? Okay. Great.
Nice to
Thank
see
you.
you. Nice to see you, Matt.
Nice to see you too.
One of my former biology students.
gee, you learned well.
Brandon, there's no fees involved with this, or is
It's a municipal project, so
Yeah,
no fees.
Okay, we have a,
Apparently not even for me. Okay. Put it on the pro bono list.
We need the invoice.
nothing to sign or anything for that.
Okay, so you've got,
Okay, we have a project update for 10 Partridge Hill, Joan Janess. And we had given you an extension at your request to July 1st to resolve the fence situation.
Should come up to talk to you.
Yes.
Thank you for.
this is the paperwork that we have for that.
Thank you for agreeing to hear us about this tonight. My name's Paul Bozo. I'm an attorney from Worcester, and working with Joan. So I'd written a couple letters to the commission, and the issue is obviously the fence, and there's a ruling that she removed the fence, so she's facing a fine, and she'd very much like to avoid that. This is, moving the fence is a considerable hardship for Mrs. Genesee because has dogs, and if she has to move the fence, the reason she put the fence up was to keep the neighborhood children from bothering the dogs from bothering the neighborhood children. And if she has to relocate the fence, besides the expense of the fence, it's gonna make her yard unusable, and she'll have to, probably have to move or sell the house. So I wanted to meet with the commission to see alternatives to moving the fence, another way to proceed. I know the commission can grant hardship waivers in certain circumstances, under your bylaws, but I also, didn't know if there was another way, that Mrs. Genesee could proceed, to have her fence or modify the fence in some way acceptable to the commission that would also work for her. She
Well,
was-
modifying the fence would be moving it back to where it's out of the wetland, where the markers were. So modifying the bottom of the fence there.
Her understanding was she built, had the fence built in front of the wetlands markers, that were there. So, she always believed that
she had put the fence in the correct spot, and she had spoken to the commission, somebody, and said, you know, they said if you're in front of the markers, you'll be all set. So,
Well, it seemed to what we looked before, that the markers, the fence was beyond what the markers were, because we have slides showing the original line. So, can you show us?
this is going back, I don't know, at least 5 years now, maybe 6. This is what the original erosion control line looked like, the bottom of the slope. And this is what it looked like once the lawn going in was established. You see, you go down the slope, and at the very bottom, before it levels out, you can see the sign. Let me, there's a sign here, sign here, sign here, silt fence wattle combo. And it's before the lawn got established. And then in 2016, when I first noticed the fence, that's on the, trying to get my bearing, I think on the north side.
South side, I think.
Yeah. But anyway, this is the other side. And what I would like to point out is, what was noticeable to me was, here's the erosion control line right here, which had been installed for this entire length for many properties all at once.
That actually got moved. That was re-put up afterwards, cause the first one came down when they were down working in on that. And
Well.
they moved it up higher because of the pickup bushes. I asked about that when they did it.
Anyway, it seemed pretty evident to me that the fence line went beyond the approved limited disturbance erosion control line. So I brought it to the commission's attention back in 2016, and we've been having this argument ever since.
If that,
So it looks like there's, looking at the picture this way, there's maybe a panel. It all depends on the angle, though. The angle that I'm at versus the angle that the silt fence is running. You know, it looks like it's close to that panel, but it could be running this way, you know, towards this one. And the tough thing about it is that, you know, once the property is sold and you have a certificate of compliance, the commission doesn't have the ability to go on the property anymore. So I'm limited in my ability to go down there and pull tape and all that stuff. And I remember having one of the meetings, getting a land surveyor in, but I don't think that went anywhere.
I thought the surveyor did it on Mr. Burns'
Burns.
time.
Yes.
And there's no certificate of compliance on this one? Oh, so
Was
it's,
an issue.
Was there an RDA or anything on the fence to begin with?
no.
In
Well,
this,
because when I called and I spoke to Brandon, I said, what can I do and what can't I do in front of with the property? And he said, you had to stay in front of the wetland signs. He didn't say, if you're gonna construct anything, you gotta come before the board. He just said, stay in front of the wetland signs, and that's what I did.
It sounds like something I might have said, but I don't recollect that conversation.
I think it was determined that we've all agreed that someone, and I'm not saying you, but someone moved those signs. Because if you look at the line, the whole stretch, it's the gentleman, I believe your next door neighbors came in, their signs are up closer to the house.
No, they're not. They're in line with mine.
they,
Weren't we talking about an as-built for this property too?
yes, I believe we were. Maybe Mr. Burns can add some more information. He was here in the fall and gave us some more information too.
I didn't bring all my notes, but we did, as Brendan had said, we knew that as lot 50, and we had to have an order of conditions from lots, I wanna say 44 through 52. And we went out there, these lots are small, with approximately 75 to less than 100 feet of road frontage. So, going on the assumption it also had the rear, we got them all at the same time. So Brandon came out, we had the wetland lines surveyed, and then Brandon came out and witnessed the surveying marks on the trees, and we had the erosion control put in exactly where it was supposed to be from, I'm gonna reverse it, from Leland Hill Road, you know, lot 52, all the way down to, if it's not 44, it's 45, it's somewhere in that area. So, it was all done at once.
I was out there myself several times, and I can testify that what I remember is it was in a straight line, right across.
Across the back. Right, and this seems like a bump out to that straight line.
So we determined that we need it pulled back to be consistent with the ones on either side. And so we did extend, as you asked, to July 1st. So after July 1st, it's $100 the first day, $200 the second day, and $300 thereafter.
Okay, the pullback is to where?
To where the neighbors would be. Was it one panel or two panels?
I think it was at least two.
It's more, I viewed it, I think the neighbors is more than 2 panels.
12 Partridge Hill.
Yeah, I have it in
Yes.
here.
James, Renard, and Chris Tours.
So I believe they just were
Yeah,
installing
theirs
their
is in.
fence.
I drove by.
They couldn't put it where they wanted to because the hill is unstable. The fence guy wouldn't put it in. They asked to go to the third pole down. And that's what they were told they could do.
You had asked if an RDA had been filed. Is that something that you can do now? After the fact?
But you'd still have to pull the fence back.
See, the issue is that the fence is in the wetlands. It's not in the buffer. It's in the wetlands.
Where do the signs go? The signs go in front of the buffer, or do they go in front of the
In
wetlands?
that case there, I believe they were right at the wetlands, were they not, Brandon?
No, I
That
believe
was
it
where
was
you-
25 feet from the wetland.
Was it?
Uh,
I thought that was the area that you had to reclamate.
Well, there's a buffer zone restoration area here, which is something we haven't gotten to either.
It's when Mr. Burns took over from the previous owner of the project that went bankrupt or whatever they did. There was some restoration that he had to do in that area and put plants in. And that's why the signs were there.
So, yeah, let me bring up the plan on the screen. It's lot 50. Let me zoom in. Went back. So lot 50, the wetland line is this line right here, goes through the zero, top part of the zero. And this line right here, so sign that bullseye, sign at that bullseye, sign at that bullseye. Erosion control barrier, permanent limited disturbance is this line right here. All right, there was work that was done in this area that Mr. Burns restored. And I remember going to the site with Mr. Burns and Art Allen from Ecotech to inspect, well, first of all, to figure out where this area is, to talk about what was gonna be done. I remember going back and inspecting it when all the work was accomplished. And
But that's the section that he landscaped. He put grass in.
I disagree, because I inspected this once the lawn was done, and
I didn't extend the lawn, so he put the lawn in on the hill.
I respectfully disagree. I think that lawn and the fence came down further than this line, is in the buffer zone restoration area. This line here is fairly straight across the properties. I saw the silt fence line, and my recollection is that it's in the same spot as it was every other time I was on this property and this property, in the right spot. And then there's a bump out with the white stockade fence into this area right here where the buffer zone restoration is. I mean, short of an as-built plan, I can't, prove it to you other than the fact that I've been going to the site on a regular basis since 2012. And I know these sites very well. We talked about requiring an as-built plan, and I remember writing an email to the commission, recommendations that, in lieu of an enforcement order, and it's another quick question, was an enforcement order ever issued for this? I don't believe it was.
I don't think so.
No, this was the commission was trying to be as
Would be in the
amicable as
file,
possible.
Joyce.
But I don't remember any enforcement order being issued. Just ask Mr.
I think we
Denise to.
gave 1 year to March and extend from March to July, I
July,
believe.
right. So in lieu of an enforcement order, require the owner to produce an as-built plan. But that costs money, so I think, between $1,000 and $2,000 probably. So there was a agreement that the fence would be brought back towards the house, and then she would have until March to do it.
March 1st.
Right, and then March 1st came and Ms. Genesee asked for an extension to July, which was also granted. Go ahead.
Is, excuse me, is the edge of the buffer zone right at the bottom of that hill?
No, the buffer zone goes up the hill, so.
Uphill. It
part
does
of
go
the-
up
part of
there.
that lawn
I'm
is
just
in the
looking at
buffer
the,
zone, but the 25-foot mark from the wetland boundary is where the signs
Where the signs were.
should be or were.
okay, and were those at the very bottom of the hill? The
Yeah,
bottom-
let me show you a
Was that the edge
picture.
of the groundwork?
Let me show you a picture.
So the fence is in the 25 feet.
The fence is right at the 25-foot mark, or was it right at the 25?
But her fence now is inside the 25 foot, right?
So, let me see if I can put them side by each. So if you look at the grading on this, it goes right down, and then here, the topo lines get much further apart, okay? So we got a slope, and then we got the silt fence, limited disturbance right at the bottom of that slope, then it levels out. And I took a picture in 2013 showing just that. This is right at the bottom of the slope, and then it levels out. The silt fence and the signs are where they should be. And then I came back in November of 2013, and you can see just from looking at the grade on the fence here, it levels out right here.
What does the other side look like? Do you have a picture from the other side?
Yeah, I do. This is what it looks like on the other side.
So it looks to me like the bottom panel is in, all the rest of the panels are out, correct?
Not necessarily.
No.
This is the angle.
Depends on the angle you're looking at. So I'm looking in from this direction, right? But this is coming up, along the bottom of the slope in this direction, so it could be here, it could be anywhere in here,
So you're saying I moved the neighbor's sign too?
No one's saying you moved it. We're saying we believe someone moved it because they weren't there.
And that fence was cut so that it wouldn't look at an angle. But he shortened all the boards.
And weren't there different signs?
No, they were the same signs, different poles.
This
Different
sign
poles.
right here looks like it should be this sign right here. Cause they're about 50 feet apart, if I remember right. So, we got one right, right there. Now, you saying that this is your property line?
Yep.
That would be much too close to the sign as it was put on the plan and as I've seen it in the past. So it kinda looks like it was moved.
How can, is there a way that could be determined?
An as-built plan would be the best way to do it, but that's gonna cost money, the owner money. So, the easiest thing to
It's
do,
on file with the town.
an as-built plan for this,
Mm-hmm.
usually that's for with planning, or?
I
After the
went
house
to
was built?
building inspector and he showed me the as-built plan. Different department.
That as-built plan is for the foundation. Before we can go forward and build, part of the conditions of approval through the zoning board of appeals was, before we could start framing it, we had to show an as-built that showed that it complied with zoning, and that was the setback. And,
It's just for the foundation.
correct.
It's not for the limit of lawn necessarily.
I will say that we've had all those other lots that I mentioned, I do stand somewhat corrected, it's either lot 44, 45 through 52. We've gone and gotten certificate of compliances, which Brandon's gone out and witnessed that the, erosion control was where it should have been, and it wasn't guesswork, it was all done by a surveyor and so forth, and it was exactly where it should have been. Every other lot.
I agree.
Yeah.
So we had talked the last fall about the survey, and it seemed that Mr. Burns had the survey information.
But he said that my fence had to go back to the very top of the hill.
That's how I remember it too, that it was like 3 panels, 2 or 3 panels.
So if that's the case, then the signs were never in the right place, cause you all just agreed that the picture of the hill, landscaped by John Burns, with the signs were in the correct place. And now you're telling me to bring it all the way to the top of the hill.
I just said all I remember is
Which
that we
cuts
discussed.
the lawn completely in half, and with 2 dogs,
I don't think anybody said to bring it to the top of the
they
hill.
did in
They said it has to be,
It has to go back to where, it has to go back to
John's got a question.
this spot right here, which is right at the very bottom of the slope.
so if an as-built plan was done, then how long that would take to,
You have to get a surveyor, right, to do it.
right,
Right.
so if you're gonna do that for the,
But we're all saying the bottom of the hill.
Mr. Burns?
May I address the board with that bottom of the hill? I think it was brought up, we actually did have our surveyor, we could question him after the meeting, and he confirmed that it was put in, he had the exact paperwork from when he went out there. In addition to this, what was also brought up at the last meeting that we had here is that Joan brought her own landscaper in after we did the landscaping and did some additional work in the backyard.
All they did was grade the hill, so I wouldn't fall down with the lawnmower.
Well, whatever, there was additional work done, we didn't monitor it, what was done, what extensions. So when you're referring to the flat spot, we didn't do that flat spot. We did it exactly where the line is. We have lots 44 through 52 without any single issue. And I'll go on to say, I think Brandon knows this, I think we also have lots 21, 22, 23, no issues whatsoever with them. And that was, I don't wanna take credit for that, that's our surveyor laying it out, us putting everything where it should be. This is the only one with an issue. And there was another landscape that went in there that wasn't our landscaper. So, I'm not saying he moved them, but I can tell you we didn't move them. I made that statement last time, I stand by, we never moved those signs. In fact, I think, Brandon, those signs were up before we even broke ground on the property. I think that was, I'm sorry, before we delivered the property.
I was in the property when they were put up.
This is the 3rd time we've been through this, and I think our conclusion is the same.
well,
I'm
Respect-
just confused where the fence needs to go.
respectfully, just from what I've heard, this is the first time I've been here, of course, it does seem there's some uncertainty as to where the fence needs to go, because
It needs-
actually moving it up the hill was very detrimental, but if it's just a panel,
It was more than a panel, and I don't wanna eat my words, but I believe it was 2 or 3 panels. And I know Mr. Burns, the surveyor, went out there, and then there was, you were upset because the surveyor was on, when you weren't home, and he did it on, I believe on his dime. The neighbor came in, the neighbor's fence is in line, everyone else's property's in line, but the wattle, we've all seen the pictures, we've just rehashed it a few times.
My recollection's coming back, I don't mean to interject, but if I'm not mistaken, Joan, you used the same survey we did to give you the sidelines and the rear when you put up your fence. He got it exactly right on the side, and he swears that he got it exactly right on the rear. What was put in was not what he staked.
I didn't, the rear was up on Leland Hill.
The rear wetlands line.
He just went down to the bottom of the hill.
He went to where the
Wetland
limit
side
of
was.
work was authorized, that's what he had represented. I guess if the board would like, it was Heritage Design, it was Lance Anderson that went out there and did the work. You're more than welcome to write him or ask him for any of his records. I have no skin in this other than to say that we're just here to comply with what the commission approved for us.
Well, you have a little bit of skin in it, cause if the fence has to now move to the top of the hill, you charged me to landscape that hill.
Joe, we put that hill in, and I'm very comfortable that we put that in where it was. You had a landscaper that went in there. We do know that he brought in, a fair amount of material and plantings. We didn't monitor it.
There's a big difference between the very top of the hill and the bottom of the hill.
I think maybe the commission should ask to talk to the landscaper that did the work back there.
Well, I think maybe we just need to have the surveyor put stakes in where it needs to be pulled back to. And that would, we don't say that you have to take your whole fence down, just pull it back to out of the 25 feet. So you've had almost a whole year to do this.
Probably be
Over
the
a year.
easiest way. If you can just get your surveyor out there, maybe it is only one panel. I don't know. Or maybe it's two. It could be four. I don't know.
Yeah, that's where the survey comes in, and I think that's the best way.
Didn't the surveyor that she
Mr. Burns,
hired to do the sides and Mr. Burns used originally, Heritage, has already done this, so why spend the money again? I mean, you can.
Well, it's
I
not
mean,
marked anymore, right?
He never marked it when he came.
Brandon, didn't we have pictures of the lawn before it was?
yes.
I got all kinds of pictures.
I don't know if the attorney wants to see it, but I know I've seen them where the grass slope has changed and
Well, the grass slope had to change because in order to mow it, you have to be able to walk on it, and the pitch that it was left at, you fell down the lawn, fell down.
I don't know, the other properties on either side have similar slopes, so, I mean, the other
They don't mow it, they don't have anything on it.
All we're concerned about is getting the fence out of our jurisdiction or where the
and
signs.
it's not, no one's trying to pick on anyone, it's
No,
the
it's
same.
just a matter of I had to put the fence up because the kids were teasing the dog and they zapped him, and then some little girl fell and almost cracked her head open. I can't lose my house because I get sued because some kids zapping my dog, and now I have two dogs. And when you bring it all the way to the back of the top of the hill, there's no room for them. When I walked this lot with John, it was with the intention I was getting a dog and I was trying to get custody of a kid, a foster care kid that I took care of. And now the whole property is cut in half.
That,
So what I paid for a house is no longer what I got.
those signs are where they should be, I think. Is that what we're assuming?
Oh, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, those
So that's
signs
at the- so
are where
that's
they
at-
should be.
So if the fence is in front of those signs, it's okay.
Right where the silt fence is, which is just, like
But
a
that
foot or
silt
two in
fence
front.
isn't there anymore, so.
Yes, it is.
Oh,
It's
is it?
It's underneath the landscaping. It's underneath the mulch I put down
It
and
shouldn't
all the
be.
Well,
plants.
if it's underneath the mulch you put down, then you went past the limit of disturbance.
No, I laid it down this way to use the silk fence, to use this weed guard. I pulled it forward and laid it down so that rather than buying weed stuff, I said, well, it's sitting there and nobody's taking it down, I'm gonna use it, I put it down and put my mulch on top of it and planted.
You shouldn't be doing that. Yeah.
When I-
Again, I called and I was told, stay in front of the signs, you can do anything you want, and that's what I did, I
I would-
landscaped it so it looked natural.
Joe, you just
I
made a
would've never-
derogatory comment about me, what you said. Let's face the bottom line is, your landscaper moved that. I have people that would probably come in here tonight and say that. You know it and I know it. We didn't do anything wrong.
You know, this is kind of between the two of you. Our concern is
Actually, I don't
moving the
think
fence.
it's between Mr. Burns. I don't think Mr. Burns did anything wrong.
So now
I-
you're
if
saying
the
I
sil-
did it all.
I didn't say you did it, but Mr. Burns was proved by Brandon, the town consultant, am I right, that they were done correctly at some
Yep.
point in 2012? And at
it's
some point
even-
after they changed?
what he did there with the silt fence and the signs is even with all the other properties along that stretch,
Except,
Except the one.
except this one where it looks obvious to me that the fence went beyond that, it bumps out further than it should. And we've been having this argument for over a year now. Did it go past it? How far did it go past? And we've been asking for an as-built, which kinda sorta happened with Heritage Design. But nothing definitive and nothing that Ms. Genesee has agreed to. We do have, I did find in my file, a plan created by Heritage Design Group that should have been submitted to the commission. I don't know if you still have it, but it shows pretty clearly where the fence is.
You want
Being beyond.
Should, it's not stamped in, right, but it's official.
Here you go. And you can pass that around. And, well, let me see if I have it digitally. I don't
Here's
know
a
if it
bunch
was
of
handed out at a
pictures.
meeting or if it was done digitally. Yeah, here it is. So this is the plan that Heritage Design Group did,
here's a bunch of pictures.
showing the plan, showing the buffer zone restoration area, the permanent limit of disturbance, where the, what is this?
It's showing where the existing place.
Existing wetland placard.
Exact measurement.
And then it's saying proposed,
That's where the
so it's
fence
moving them
is.
up higher.
That's where the line is, 31 feet.
Hold on. So she's beyond.
31 feet. Do you read it? You make sure I'm not losing it.
31 feet,
It's gonna be moved.
Proposed location of wetland
Which is-
placard, state location. That's not right, that's not according to the plan, the plan that was approved has the placards up at that black dash line.
But they were never up there.
The existing wetland placards, they show is much further down.
Is it,
So
it's-
it's 31
what's the
feet she has to
same
move the fence?
Bob's double checking it.
Bob can double check it, but there's a survey there with the PVC fence.
Meeting minutes say that you agreed to 24 feet.
That's fine, 24 feet would be great.
But
Well,
your
see,
meeting
that-
minutes
that's
also-
what's bothering me
Meeting
now.
minutes also said that one of the meetings that John came to said that my fence was 20 feet on the people next door to me's property too.
We didn't say
There,
that.
there was just
It's in
the,
the meeting minutes.
there was just the yellow,
Well, you just said to us 10 minutes ago, when we could go back on the record, that you
Yeah.
did not know how many feet you
No,
had to
it was
move it
in
up,
yellow.
and now you're saying it's 24 feet.
I'm
Now,
try-
it's
but I don't
9:30
know
at
if
night, and I don't think people are being honest, and I don't think that's fair to the board or to anyone in this room.
And it's not fair to me. And I'm trying to do what's right, and I'm trying to do so that I don't lose out.
You know, and I can understand where you're coming from, because I sat in that audience tonight, I don't know if you were here. And my meeting for my family got continued because something was in the wrong area. And it happened to me, and we had to continue. So it's not like we're just picking on you, I know you feel that way. Everyone's treated the same. Mr. Burns is not gonna get treated any differently if he comes in with another development, because he's built 100 houses in town. I understand you're upset.
I'm
It's,
upset because I'm being penalized.
I don't think you're
And
being-
I'm being accused of moving signs that I never moved.
for the record,
you may
no.
never have, but
No one
somebody
here
did.
said you moved the signs. No one here said you did. I personally believe someone did. But I didn't say it was you. And I just think it's really sad because we've tried to help you out for, a year and a half? And here we are again.
24 feet, I just had a thing here, it was underlined in yellow and it said 24 feet. If everyone is agreed with the 24 feet, move your fence 24 feet back and we'll be happy.
that doesn't help you, does it?
No, it means I sell, I move, and I lose my job.
Moving the fence 24 feet. So, again, if indulge me 1 second. So yet this plan is showing wetlands placards. I hope it's not correct.
This is
That-
existing wetland placards.
And it shows the fence in
Oh,
front of it.
here it is, it was kept showing.
That's existing based off of what was the survey done.
Here's the minutes of the meeting, it says,
Agree to
Mr.
24 feet in the middle,
yeah,
going straight
24
up the
feet in
hill.
the middle, going straight up the hill.
Right, so you.
20 feet on the right side and 31 feet on the left side, so he would agree to 24 feet in the middle, going straight up the hill.
Yeah,
So you were right when you brought up the minutes. And that's from March 1st, 2017.
yep. And that's when the commission gave a year.
Yeah. And if memory serves, are they 8-foot section fence?
8, 16, 24, that's 3 sections.
So it was, but they're 8-foot sections, so it was gonna be 3 sections.
3 sections get taken out.
I don't know if they're 8-foot sections, so I won't agree to saying I'm taking out 3.
Well, certificate of compliance hasn't been issued. The commission has the opportunity and the regulatory might to require an as-built for the entire property.
I'm just saying, I'm not saying, I'll do the 24 feet, but I'm not saying it's 3 full sections, because I don't know how big they are.
It'll just have to get
Measure
amended,
24
however.
feet.
Yeah.
Yeah, 24 feet.
That's
And
the easiest way out of this, I think, for you.
The easiest way for everybody, I have to sell my house, I have to move, I have 2 dogs that need room to run around. I can't do it, I can't, so I end up losing my job, so you just wipe me out. So whatever you agree to, that's what I'll do, but I have to leave.
That's up to you.
I
20,
can't do it, I mean, there's too
20,
much.
24 feet by July 1st. That's,
Do we need a motion for that?
no. That was what was agreed on a year
Yeah.
ago.
Is there any chance for the board to consider a hardship waiver?
Not after a year and a half, I don't think. I mean, we decided this was agreed upon a
March
year,
of
March of
2017.
2017.
And you took 7 months to respond to his letter. Which made it push, that's why we had to ask for.
And we gave you an extension to July 1st. The conservation doesn't wanna be in the business of finding people. We're not in the business of trying to make money, so I don't want you to think we want you to pay
As long
money.
as the
$300
fence
a
is
day every
above,
day, right.
above where the original signs were proposed to be,
Then it's fine, yeah.
so that in that case there, it's not necessarily moving it 24 feet. In the center, it's a case of moving it 9 feet plus or minus 10 feet in the center. Am I reading this correctly?
No, the 24 foot is about equal with what the original
Fence.
fence was, which is right here. Okay, so you go from this line right here.
I can't see what you're pointing at.
You want me to, let me zoom in a little bit more. Oh, go like that. Alright, see this line right here? And then we go to,
Yeah, I guess,
it's about even with this line.
yeah,
right here.
it's just, at least looking at that drawing there, you've got the 3 circles with the X in it, which are identified as, or assumed to be, the previous wetland flag location.
If that's what it says, I think it's an error.
Well, I'm just
You
saying,
know
it
what,
makes
it
it very
says proposed.
confusing.
It does, I agree. But it says
Right.
proposed location, which I don't agree with. I think that the bottom line from that meeting was that the fence would get moved uphill 24 feet, which would be more or less continuous with what the original limit of disturbance was.
So the other alternative would be an as-built, and if the as-built shows that it's not in the original location, you're still having to move the fence, so.
Right, it might be.
Could be worse.
It could be worse, it could be better, but the thing is it's gonna cost you another, on average $1,500 for an as-built, and then you still have to move the fence.
possibly move the fence unless they find it better, but,
I
Does
highly
it?
doubt, I
I-
highly doubt that,
and I agree with you.
yeah. So it's kinda like a settlement.
How come, excuse me, how come I don't understand the proposed location of the wetland plaque.
I don't either, I don't agree with that. Maybe that's where they propose to put it, but the fence still goes up that high. That's really not how it should be. It should be right along that line, right behind where the fence is.
That was the surveyor that did that, right?
Surveyor did that.
And he didn't
This
know, he didn't
plan-
understand it.
This plan here was never approved by the commission, except that it was used as a guide to figure out where the fence should be. This was, the plan of record is this one right here. This shows which is the same as, this plan right here, which shows the limit disturbance along this line. That's what's in the order of conditions. The other plan was used as a guide for the negotiation process with the movement of the plan. This is not an official plan. It was used to negotiate and navigate what needed to be done. And the 24-foot mark was what was agreed to.
Okay, I think it's 9:30 at night. And I think everything is said that's been
So-
said.
So if there was an as-built plan, which shows the different distances, would she need to come back before, does Genesis need to come back before the commission?
Yes, because if the as-built plan did not show that the fence was where it is, where we expected it to be, then she'd still have to move the fence. So she'd pay $1,500 for the as-built, or whatever it would be.
But if it was a better situation for her, if it was less of a move,
Right, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, she just move it less.
okay. But I
It could
mean,
be- It could be more. You don't know, but that's why an as-built would be very useful, but, it's gonna cost you on average $1,500, and then you'd still have to move the fence anyway. So what we had here was kind of like a negotiated settlement.
but if there was an as-built plan that showed something different than 24 feet, would it be necessary to come back before the commission and say, look at this plan that
Only to inform us, I mean,
Well,
otherwise we could have no
it would
way
be
of knowing.
submitted as part of your certificate of compliance. All right, so there would be coming back at least once more, but, you'd submit the certificate of compliance, but also there would be a final site inspection showing that the fence had actually been moved, and we can verify that the fence is now in the correct location per the as-built plan, per the original site plan associated with the order of conditions
By July 1st.
by July 1st.
All right, anyone have anything else? Are we all done? Motion?
Make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor?
Adjourn.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.